Ladles and jelly spoons, welcome back to Badgerworks. Today, this. Oh, it's not in the middle. This is the enclosure for my Resin 3D printer, my Elegoo Mars Pro. And today, we're going to try and build a heater for it. So, let's get on with it. So yes, this is, as I said, the enclosure for my Mars Pro. It's like a first, second, whatever it is, generation resin printer. You've seen stuff that I've printed on it. It works very well. The problem that we have is at this time of year, when the weather is cold, it becomes very difficult to print because you need the resin to be at a certain temperature. I mean, ideally around like 25 degrees to print. And the problem is it's bloody cold at the moment, not to put too fine a point on it, which makes it very difficult to print things. The prints have a tendency to fail because the resin's too cold. Now, I could just leave the heating on in the workshop. You can probably hear the heating running now because it is very cold in here at the moment. But that's kind of unsustainable. You know, heating the entire workshop just to keep this warm is not ideal. It's a waste of money, and I'm not prepared to do it. So I have decided to try and heat this enclosure. Now, you can buy heaters for this purpose. The only problem is with those heaters is I've seen mixed reviews of how effective they are, and they cost £55. And I don't really, I mean, if they were like a fiver, I would just buy one and say, I'll give it a go. But they're £55, and I don't want to spend £55 on something and then find out it doesn't work very well. So, yeah. So we're going to try and make our own DIY one. So let's go over to the other bench so I can show you what we've got to try and make this work. Right, so what we've got here is a 5-watt vivarium heater. I bought this. Long-time viewers will probably know that we have a menagerie of animals in our house, one of whom is a snail. Giant African land snail called Brian, because of course it's called Brian. What else would you call a snail? Anyway, we had the same problem with his. He lives in a glass tank, and we had the same problem with that. It was too cold for him. They should be kept at a temperature apparently between 21 and 23 degrees Celsius, and when it was cold, he would hibernate. And my daughter would always freak out and think he was dead. And it's like, no, he's just hibernating because he's too cold. So I bought this to try and warm up his tank. And it was woefully inadequate for that purpose. It was far too small. I should have known at the time. So this didn't work. It kind of helped a bit, but it didn't really work. So I bought a bigger one, which works a treat. And that's what's given me the idea for this. So this is the one that I bought originally, which is now we have no use for. So I'm going to try and repurpose this. So what I'm going to do is this will actually fit very nicely inside that enclosure. So what I'm hoping is that I can mount this on the inside of that enclosure and use it to heat or keep just the inside of that enclosure warm. It doesn't need to be hot, but just warm. That's the plan. I don't know if it's going to work or not, but we'll give it a go and see what happens. I also have hang on, let's get rid of this. I also have this, which is a combination temperature and humidity sensor. Brian's enclosure had 3 temperature sensors in it. It doesn't need 3, so I've repurposed one for my purposes here. So as you can see, this measures temperature and humidity. I don't really care about the humidity, it's the temperature. Now this currently says 23.4 degrees. And looking at the thermometer on the wall, that is about accurate. So it will do for our purposes. Now, here's the problem. Coming back to this thing. It has a thermostat on it. It's not actually a we'll get into that in a minute, but that's not the point. I don't really just want to put this like under the side of the enclosure because obviously the wire needs to come out. So what I want to do is I want to drill a hole in the side of the enclosure for this wire to go through. But I don't want to drill a massive hole. I want to drill a hole this big. So what we need to do first of all is disconnect the wires so that we can feed the wire through from the inside and then reconnect it to this. So let's take this apart. Now I suspect there's a rheostat in here. In fact, oh actually, before we do anything else, we should probably get this off as well. Oh, let's just get this button off. Because the way this works is you hear that click to go on, and then you turn it, and the more you turn it, the hotter this pad gets. But I'll show you how that works in a minute. Let's just pop this off, if we can. There it goes. So that's just a little button thing that sits on top of there. Now let's get those bits out and put on one side. So yes, this is indeed a rheostat. They call it a thermostat. Technically they're not wrong, because it is used to control the temperature of this. But this is not a thermostat in the true sense of the word. This is what's called a rheostat. And the way it works is it controls, you have a coil inside here. And as you can see, you've got the live is going into this and then out of it. And the neutral just bypasses it. So what happens is, when you turn this, hang on. When you turn this, what you are doing is you are adjusting, there's a coil of wire inside. And as you move this contact, what you're doing is you are adjusting the resistance on the wire. So you are allowing more or less current to pass through it. And by controlling the amount of current that goes to the heat pad, you control the temperature of the heat pad. So although technically it is doing the job of a thermostat, it's actually a rheostat. But anyway, that's beside the point. So what I want to do is I want to take this wire off, and that way I can drill a hole small enough for this, pass it through, solder it back on. So for now, I'll just cut it, and then we'll desolder everything later. So I'll just nip that off there, and we'll cut that in half, like that. And now this end with the plug on it, we can put to one side. So what we need to do now is drill a hole in the enclosure for this wire. We also need to drill a hole for our temperature sensor. This is just for information more than anything. And we need to figure out a way to mount this to the inside of the enclosure, which is probably going to be double-sided tape. But we'll figure that out in a minute. Right, let's do that. Right, so I need to drill a 9 well, the probe for the temperature sensor is 9.3 millimeters. So I've got a 9.5 millimeter drill here, and I'm going to drill in through the top of here, but I want to drill a pilot hole first, because this is not exactly there's like a little dimple in the top. I think that might have drifted off to the side a little bit. Like I said, there's a little dimple in it, but I also want to be very careful hang on a minute. I want to be very careful not to crack this plastic. The funny thing is, you'll see that I've left this the cellophane that was on it when I got the printer, because it stops this from getting scratched and gathering dust and other things, you know. There we go. And it's kind of in the middle. Good enough for government work, as Bunny Kitten always says. Right. This is going to be hilarious. In fact, what I might do, I've got a 5mm drill here as well. I think I might put this through it first. this is to drill a hole in the side for the wire, but I use it to open this up as well. Like I say, the last thing I want to do is break this enclosure, because the main purpose of this enclosure is to keep, not only to keep dust and everything out of the printer, but to keep the UV light away from the resin so it doesn't cure when you know, before you're ready for it. Right. This should be fine. What could possibly go wrong? Oh. Oh. Oh, come on. There we go. Oh. There's brute force and ignorance, and then there's brute force and ignorance. Right, so this should now fit nice and snug in there, you see. So that's that. So what we want to do now is drill a hole in the side, and this is where it's going to be, because this is quite rigid here. So we need to be careful, because the last thing we would like to say, the last thing we want to do is actually crack this plastic. That looks to be about in the middle. Oh. Right, that was heart-rending. Now, what I'm going to do is I'm going to basically put this like this on the inside, and I think what I'm going to do is I'm going to mount it with some double-sided tape. Right, let's try these. These are the cheap ones from the pound shop. But see, what I might need to do is, I don't think it's going to get hot enough to affect this plastic, but if it does, then I'll put some tin foil or something on the back of it to reflect the heat. But I don't have any to hand, and I'm too lazy to go down to the house and get some. But I'm sure it'll be fine. So we'll put one there. And one there. And like that. And so now what we want to do is thread this wire might need to make this hole slightly bigger, I'm not sure yet. I was hoping that would be, oh right, we're going to have to borrow that out a little bit. Alright, let's try that again. There we go. Right, so we'll thread that through there. then we can stick that like that. Right, so let's get these sticky pads uncovered. So this is more a proof of concept than anything else. We can always come back and tidy it up again afterwards. Right, and stick. There we go. Right, so what we'll do is I'll go and just quickly put this back on the printer and make sure it still fits, because and then we can wire this back to the plug. Right, this is kind of awkward. Oh. Oh. The reason it's awkward is because I've got the actual enclosure lid on my lap at the moment, because it's the only place I can put it to do this. Right, that's that. Now we want this, so we need to strip this as well. Oh God. Oh, that might be why. The adjuster was wound all the way out. No wonder it wouldn't grip. That's better. Oh. Right, so the first thing we need to do is desolder that bit of wire on there. Which is attached very badly, which is slightly concerning when it's you know, mains electricity, but still. Right, helping hand. If you do not have a helping hand, by the way, get one, because they're really, really useful. They're great when you're doing things like this, just to hold things. Right, I'm looking around for the wire, and of course it's in my lap, isn't it? I apologise if this all seems a bit slapdash, because that's exactly what it is. This was just an idea I had, and I thought, oh, I'll go ahead and do that, without really giving it too much thought. So, yeah, it is a little bit slapdash. But hey ho, all the best ideas are slapdash. Right, now I want to do that round that way, which is awkward, but still. I'll try and do this without burning my fingers. There we go. Right, that's that. Now, this is going to be fun. I might just put those together like that. Yeah, that'll work. Heat shrink first, because otherwise we're going to hate ourselves. That's far too long. Where did I put the scissors? Back in the drawer. Oh, come on. Oh. Right, stay. Oh, rats. That's just what I didn't want to happen. There's always the trouble when you're doing things like this, is trying to get the wires to join up in such a way, because you don't want to have, you know, masses of wire, but at the same time you need enough to actually be able to connect it together. Right, let's try that again. There we go. That's got it. Right, and then we'll pop that over there like that. And use the soldering iron to shrink it. There we go. Perfect. Kind of. Right, let's put this case back on. It goes like that. Screwdriver. And where did the little cap knob thing go? What did I do with that? What did I do with that? There it is. Right, that goes on there like that. Right, so now we can put this all back together and see if it works. Right, now you have to excuse me because I'm having to hold this camera in my hand because I don't have a camera stand handy. So that is currently reading 22 degrees and that was with this thing off. So I'm going to turn it on and then we'll check it in a minute and see what it's like. So as I say, at the moment that's reading 22 degrees. We'll come back and check it in a few minutes. Right, we are back in shaky cam again. I do apologise. That's been on for about half an hour, 40 minutes now. The ambient temperature in the workshop is still 22 degrees, but as you can see, the temperature inside the enclosure is 26 degrees. Also, it's interesting to note the humidity has dropped about 6% in there, although I don't trust that humidity sensor at all. But so it's 4 degrees warmer inside the enclosure than it is on the outside. The side of the enclosure where the heat pad is slightly warm to the touch. The rest of the enclosure is actually cold to the touch. So, you know, that temperature has just dipped a bit. But again, it's about 4 degrees warmer inside that enclosure. So that seems to be working. Now, the other thing that I'm going to do is I do have a cover for this that the missus made for me out of an old blackout curtain, like a fabric cover that goes over the top. And that's just a bit of like belt and braces so when that's on there, there is absolutely no light getting in there at all. So that should also provide another thermal barrier. But what we'll do is we'll leave this now, and I'm going to go in and have my dinner, quite frankly. But we'll leave this until tomorrow. I'll obviously turn the heating off when I go indoors, and we'll check tomorrow and see what the ambient temperature is in the workshop and what the temperature is in the enclosure, and see how we go from there. But so far, this is looking quite promising. Right, again, apologies for the shaky cam. I'm doing the best I can. I've had the heating off for a while now. It is currently 8 degrees Celsius, centigrade, in the workshop, ambient, and as you can see, it is 17.5 in the enclosure, which is not quite as warm as I would have liked, but it's still 10 degrees warmer inside that enclosure than it is on the outside. Now you'll see that I have put the cover on. I'm not sure if I mentioned that before. The cover was made by the missus. It's made out of an old blackout curtain, and I use it basically as a bit of belt and braces to keep light out of the enclosure. But it's also working quite nicely as an extra layer of insulation. So I think this is going to work, possibly. We'll see how it goes. We'll do some prints with it over the next few days, and see how it goes, and maybe we'll do a follow-up on this, you know, in a couple of weeks and see how we've been getting on with it. But on the whole, I'm moderately impressed with this so far. As my daughter would say, mildly content. So yeah, there you go. Just a bit of an off-the-cuff one this time, but hopefully it's of interest to some of you. I know there are quite a lot of people interested in 3D printing, and this might be a way to help out, you know, if you're having similar issues. But as ever, I'd like to thank my top-tier patrons, Howard, Amy and Hawaii Clive-O, for their continued support, and I will see you all in the next video. Thanks very much for watching. Cheers. Bye.